Most people spend a huge amount of effort looking for the right job, right? They agonize over a resume, they search online, carefully prepare for interviews, find the right clothes that are right for them, and on and on and on. And finding the right job is important because a job is a big part of life. But would you agree with me that finding the right mate might be even more important? Yet looking for the ideal life partner is so often taken very casually. No self-assessment, little preparation, well, maybe a spritz of cologne or so. Why is that? What if you brought the same rigor to searching for a romantic partner, a spouse, or a mate? If you're already hitched, do you think the outcome would have been different had you approached the process this way? Well, I confess that I did not initially go about it this way. It was over 20 years ago, and I had just been dumped by my then fiancé. I moped around for months and complained to anyone who would listen. And finally, my hairdresser said he was tired of hearing about it. He told me that if I did not do something dramatic to get back on the dating scene, he wasn't going to cut my hair again. I would have to find a new hairdresser. Now that was worse than telling me I had to find another gynecologist. I would do anything to avoid that. So I placed a free ad in the local paper. Remember newspapers? Well, that's how we did it prior to online dating sites. You cannot say much in a free 3-line ad, so I got few responses. But hey, I'd taken the action I needed to get my hair cut, and it had not cost me a dime. My measly little ad, however, ran right next to a 21-line ad that I found quite intriguing. It took me a whole weekend to get up enough nerve to call to respond, and when I did, I reached a recording in a woman's voice that said, "The gentleman who placed this ad would much prefer that you send a written response with how you satisfy the criteria in this advertisement." What? You want an application? Is this a job I'm applying for? I was pissed. So click, I hung up. I crumbled up with great carelessness that advertisement I had cut out the day before with great carefulness and stuffed it into my purse. And then I forgot about it until the next day while on a flight to San Juan, Puerto Rico, where I would be working for the next week. Now, in those days, we did not travel with laptops, and I did not have much more than an airline magazine to occupy me. Remember magazines? And this flight was over 4 hours long. So after eating the boring airline meal, reading that agonizing magazine, and unsuccessfully trying to fall asleep, I eventually pulled that crumpled piece of newspaper from my purse and began to think. You see, I have many years' experience in talent management, which is the hiring, developing, and measuring the performance of employees. And it hit me that figuring out if someone is a potential romantic partner is a lot like the process of applying for and going through the screening for a job. In an interview, you're always asked something like, "Why do you want this job?" The company wants to know if your interests align with the job because they want to know that you're going to be happy and not leave. They also want to know if you're going to be successful on the job, so they inquire about your knowledge, your skills, and your strengths. They want to know that you're going to be able to operate in your sweet spot. And the company wants to know that you will fit in, that the organizational culture is a good match. I started to get really excited about this line of thinking. I could have danced in the aisles, but the fasten seatbelt sign was on. See, I realized it is the same with applying for a significant relationship. Are you going to have enough common interests that you will enjoy time together? Will you get to use your strengths, and do you have the relationship skills to be successful? Even more important than that, do the strengths align with your partner's needs in a relationship? And will the culture of this relationship fulfill your own needs and minimize your stress? So in light of my newfound insight, I thought again about submitting the application before me, but I was still pissed. See, he had the upper hand, just like a real hiring manager, and I didn't like that. So I decided that I would apply in the most sarcastic way possible and try to turn the tables a bit so I could play hiring manager too. I took every one of the descriptors in that 21-line ad and I listed them down the left-hand side of a piece of loose-leaf paper. And then I wrote the most sarcastic response I could think of, but one that also sold me. It was like a manual version of an Excel spreadsheet, and I entitled it Screen Test. Screen stood for scrutiny, creating reaction, evoking emotional nausea. For example, the ad asked if I were classy. So I wrote classy down the left, and on the right I wrote, I know the difference between Libby glass and Waterford crystal, but I've been known to sip champagne from a Dixie cup. And just like in a real job application process, I wrote a nice little cover note that said something like, I'm happy to submit this application, and should you agree with me that I meet all the qualifications, I would be happy to talk further. When we landed in San Juan, I mailed this gem of an application back to the mainland U.S., but I was still a little bit pissed and wanted to make sure he had to work a bit. So I did not include a return address or phone number. I did provide an email address as a clue, but remember it was over 20 years ago and few people had emails. And the last line of that cover note was a bit of a challenge. As great as you seem to be, I'm sure that you will find me. And once again, I forgot about it. Until several weeks later, back on the mainland, I answered the phone late one night, and what do you know? It's the mystery hiring manager. How had he found me and gotten a phone number with just my email, sarahsales@aol.com? I didn't ask because I wanted to appear cool. We talked for hours, though, about our mutual interests. This is mostly what filled the 21 lines of his ad. Do you like NPR, dogs, travel? The match on his long list of interests gave us a lot to talk about that night, and it was intriguing enough that I wanted to spend more time with him. So we set a date. As I'm getting ready for this date, I was now really thinking about the parallels with the job hiring process and thinking about the questions I needed to be asking next. So I focused on the second question that is almost always asked in a job interview. Why do you think you will be successful? This question is designed to uncover the knowledge, skills, and behaviors that will enable us to be successful on the job. I wondered, what's the parallel with screening for a maid? So I went back to the ad to see if there were any adjectives that would describe attributes that might help me to think about this. And there were none. I think the most important aspect of this are our behaviors that we've learned as a way to be successful. And all other things being equal will also be the way we prefer to behave. These are what I call strengths, and I found the best way to uncover your strengths is to ask someone else. An example of a strength is organizing. It often plays out in a relationship as a preference for ordering and eliminating clutter in the house. You can begin to see how radically different strengths, behaviors may cause conflict in a relationship. But there's another important part of this question that is important, and these are relationship knowledge and skills. For example, do you know how to fight fair? An interviewer will often ask a specific behavioral question to assess this. The question often goes like this. Tell me a time when you had a problem with, fill in the blank. What did you do and how did you overcome it? The corollary in a relationship is, when you had a disagreement with your last girlfriend, what did you do and what was the outcome? Think about asking this question of your potential mate and see if she has worked on the relationship skills required to be successful. I wish I'd had the guts to ask this specific question myself, but I did at least probe on his former relationships. The third question that is often asked in a job interview is, why do you think you will fit into our organization? This question seeks to uncover if our natural behavioral tendencies, aka our strengths, are likely to be compatible with the overall culture of the organization so that you do not create stress for other people. But it also seeks to assess if the cultural environment is going to cause you stress. This is something you want to know as well. In a relationship, for example, how much financial security do you need to stay out of stress? It differs for each person, and it often takes some investigative introspection to uncover all those things that we expect or need to minimize our own strengths. But what often causes stress in a relationship are when someone's strength behaviors are at direct odds with their partner's needs. For example, my husband likes to make quick decisions, and that's a strength for him. But I need time to think things through. Pushing me for a quick decision is a recipe for a big fight. But we know that now and have developed ways to address it. First of all, we recognize and honor the different approaches we each have, and as much as possible, try to address each other's needs in everything that we do. And secondly, when conflict does arise, we first address the role that different personalities have to do with the conflict and resolve those issues before tackling the real ones. Unfortunately, personal ads, and job screening for that matter, sometimes do a poor job of assessing strength behaviors and needs. So it takes some work on each person's part to figure out what these factors are and how they play out in a relationship. My husband and I got some of this as a result of a really good personality assessment we took as part of our premarital counseling. The counselor who interpreted the results for us said, "I'm not going to tell you not to get married, but I can tell you what you will fight about the rest of your marriage." And she was right. But with knowledge of our strengths and needs, we were able to develop rules to help us fight fair when these situations do arise. It's obvious to you by now that I did marry the gentleman who placed this ad. But I bet you're still wondering, how did he find my phone number with just sarahsales@aol.com as a clue? I still don't know. There was only some mumbo jumbo about I've always been close to law enforcement and I got some help. Do you think maybe he's a spy or a private eye and he's spoofed me all these years? Well, I guess it's possible, which all points out that no process is perfect. And you cannot uncover everything about everyone, no matter how good an assessment or job background check you've got. So you will have to continue learning about the other individual and how you can each support each other's journey and your own. But you can certainly jumpstart the process by consciously getting to know someone and determining compatibility by dealing right up front with factual information about their personality. And it is as simple as really learning their interests, their strengths, and their needs, and looking at how that compares to your own personality. Self-awareness and curiosity are the key. Remember, the stakes are higher than just getting a haircut. This may be the most important job you apply for.